Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, January 23rd, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the 2025 elections, governor elections, state legislative elections, important things that are happening this year that will be the first true test for Democrats and Republicans as they move forward into the 2026 midterms, and of course, the ever-impending 2028 presidential election. Now, the 2025 elections, just similar to that of 2021 and 2017, will be the early indicators of Donald Trump's second presidency and where the Republican Party and Democratic Party stands to gain in the upcoming election cycles. Virginia and New Jersey, two races that are going to be very competitive and very hotly contested by both sides of the aisle for different reasons, will be again this point of contention that will help explain and help show where the future of both parties really does lie. Now, for the first time since the creation of this channel, I last covered the 2017 governor elections in New Jersey and Virginia. I covered them again in 2021, but something is different about the 2025 elections that is unlike anything we had seen before. Back in the 2016 presidential election, Hillary Clinton won the state of Virginia by a margin of roughly 5 points. She was able to win across the state in a way that was pretty substantive. It was a margin that Democrats were comfortable with going into 2017, but New Jersey was really the good one for Hillary Clinton, where she won by 14 points across the state. In 2020, very similar things happened, except the margins expanded for the Democratic candidate Joe Biden. President Biden won by 10.1% in Virginia in 2020, and in New Jersey was winning by over 15 points. But then that all came crashing down. In 2024, Virginia went to Kamala Harris by a margin of roughly 5 points. But get this, the state of New Jersey nearly identical in margin, the closest New Jersey had been in a very long time. In fact, we can visually see how close New Jersey was in comparison to previous elections. This time around, in 2024, New Jersey went to Kamala Harris by 5.9%. It was a shock to everyone on the right and the left, and honestly spoke a bit to Donald Trump holding campaign rallies in New Jersey when Democrats weren't really looking at it. Another thing to put into perspective when you're looking at New Jersey went to Kamala Harris by roughly the same margin that Donald Trump won Arizona by. And Virginia, a state that both parties invested in, Kamala Harris won by a near identical margin to that of New Jersey, when the Democrats spent no money in that state because of how solid they thought it was going to be. Biden won it by 15.9, Clinton won it by 14.1, Obama won it by 17.7, he won it the first time by 15.6, Kerry won it by 6.7, that was the last time it was that close, and in 2000 it went to Al Gore by 15.8. So 2004 and 2024 oddly had a lot more in common, and honestly that makes sense too, given the time frame, right? There were a lot of shocks of 2004. California was a single-digit race. Oregon was a 4-point race, right? You were looking at Maryland, my home state, under 15. Now it's 30-plus points for the Democrats. So 2004 and 2024 have a lot more in common than we think. But again, this is the first time I'm covering the state of Virginia and New Jersey in a way where the races have been competitive in the last election cycle. So, of course, they do have a major impact. Now, another thing I would like us to point out, why this is important to talk about, why we are going to be directing a lot of our attention on some of the races here. I'm actually going to make a video tomorrow talking about the Virginia races that we've seen that have already been held. There were already some state legislative races held in Virginia, and they actually did show not necessarily promising results for Democrats, but a glimmer of hope is how I would describe it. It shows that Democrats, in the absence of Trump on the ballot, can in fact improve, and in the immediate aftermath of Trump's election, did improve off their margins from the 2024 election. In both District 48 and District 26, where we had races, competitive races, not necessarily competitive, but rather contested races, where Democrats and Republicans were running in both of these districts here, the 26th district we specifically looked at because the margin was slightly expanded on in comparison to Kamala Harris, which goes to show at least a small glimmer of hope. It's not as massive as it was in 2017 by any metric. 2017 was a massive rejection of Trump almost immediately. All the special elections really showcased that, and granted, it is early, right? Trump was in this honeymoon phase this time 8 years ago today, but still, looking at District 26 and District 48, either on par with the Harris victory of the last cycle, which means Virginia hold that through the election, would go to the Democrats in theory, flipping the governorship from red to blue, but it's a slight expansion, so it means there's some hope there for Democrats. Either way, it does show some interesting signs, but also because in 2021, they revealed amazing signs for the Republican Party. And allow me to showcase exactly what I mean by that. In the 2021 elections here in New Jersey, this was a really good showing for the Republican Party. a race that they did not invest in, that they thought they had no chance of winning, and when looking at the expectations for the race, solid Democrat, likely Democrat, the polls had promised that this race was going to be very solid for Phil Murphy, who was the incumbent. Even Trafalgar, which had been known in 2020 to far overestimate, Donald Trump's support and far overestimated Republican support in 2022, predicted the race would go to Phil Murphy by 4 points. Never once did Jack Ciattarelli end up in the advantage in any of the polls, and yet on Election Day, it was decided by 3.2%. It was the early sign that there was a pushback on President Biden and his agenda. Same thing in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin took a state that Biden won by 10.1%. It was a double-digit Biden state. Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, won against not just any Democrat, but Terry McAuliffe, who had the electoral track record that was strong, where he was able to win in a multi-way race in 2013. He was winning a race when Obama had similar approval ratings to that of Biden. And it was a very strong performance otherwise in New Jersey, where Republicans won by double digits in 2013. So Terry McAuliffe, not someone I would say had no track record whatsoever. The results here, though, were clear. It was a rejection of President Biden and his leadership. Then in 2022, we started to see Democrats win things back. It was hopeful for Democrats that in 2024, they could replicate that on the presidential level. Obviously did not come to fruition, but the 2021 races also were indicators that 3 years down the line, hey, wait a minute. The American public is souring on Democratic leadership. Maybe they will elect a Republican. Obviously, it is early, and 2021 was not the only indicator, nor does it stand to be the truest indicator of what might happen in the coming years, but it does give us a general vibe check. Same thing as 2017. What did it show? Well, in 2017, we found that Alabama went to the Democrats in the Senate race there. But granted, they were running against a candidate who was far more scandal-plagued than most Republicans we've seen in a state like Alabama in the House races. Massive overperformances for Democrats in every single congressional district. Remember the Ron Estes and James Thompson race in Kansas? That was one of the first ones I talked about here. When you're looking at Georgia's 6th district, Karen Handel and Jon Ossoff, who lost, whatever ended up happening to him, right? Jon Ossoff ran in Georgia's 6th district, took a race that Tom Price had won by 33 in 2016, made it a 4-point race, a 3-point race, ended up losing, ended up becoming a senator 3 years later. Either way, though, all these races were indicators. And of course, yes, New Jersey and Virginia were indicators as well. Phil Murphy, who won by 15 points, a massive swing from 2013, running against the Republican who had been in the lieutenant governor's office too, and Virginia. Another big rejection of Donald Trump and his leadership here. Ralph Northam was able to defeat Ed Gillespie, who tried to reasonably distance himself in a very similar way that Glenn Youngkin did. Ed Gillespie lost this race by roughly 9 points across the state of Virginia. 3 years later, Donald Trump is ousted as president of the United States. And so again, these races often stand to be some of the early signs, not the only signs, but early signs, especially, it shows here in 2017 and 2021 that they matched up with the eventual outcome, and arguably even too in 2013 when they soured on Obama's leadership, which led to Trump's election, then soured on Trump's leadership, which led to Biden's election, then soured on Biden's leadership, which led to Trump's election. We don't know what's going to happen here. But this is the real test, and this will be a very, very good sign here for both sides, depending on how it goes. And so I'm really interested to see what happens in 2025. Some early expectations I think we can expect is if things follow the standard track record they have for the past 12 years. Under President Obama, under President Trump, under President Biden, and now President Trump again, we will likely see Virginia flip back blue, New Jersey return to being a little bit more Democratic, but still in a place that is competitive. But again, the things are different now, because I imagine that because of the 2024 results that were unlike anything that anyone had ever seen, Virginia wasn't really a shock, but New Jersey narrowing down 10 points in one election cycle is a massive, massive shift that most people could not have foreseen. I mean, we can actually visually see the results here. 2014 versus 2020, you will see that New Jersey shifted 10 exact points to the right. Virginia was only 4 points, right? It was much more tame. It was states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, much more tame. But it was the larger states, New York, an 11-point shift, Florida, a 10-point shift, Texas, an 8-point shift, California, a 9-point shift, Massachusetts, 8-point shift. Massive shifts in some of the states that, granted, did not end up making much of a difference, but were the early warning signs of what Democrats might have to defend and worry about. Not a single state shifted to the left from 2020. Not a single state. Even in comparison to 2016, there were states that in 2020 shifted. In 2020, 2016 versus 2012, states that shifted to the left, and maybe some of the silver linings here, and we'll talk about this in the future, can be states like Georgia, can be states like, in theory, Texas, but not really, maybe Arizona, but honestly not, right? Very limited here. Georgia's the only real one, but when you're looking at the 2020 to 2024 map swing, only one place shifted to the left, and it was literally Nebraska's 1st district, which is largely inconsequential because Trump won it by double digits, and it doesn't matter in terms of electoral count, right? It's just one electoral vote, and chances are Nebraska will lock it up by 2028 to be a winner-take-all state, and I'm sure Maine will likely do the same. Regardless, though, New Jersey and Virginia will be points of interest because they will tell a lot about what's going to happen in 2026. And I know it seems very interesting that these races are so early on and they mattered. Regardless, though, the 2025 elections are going to be indicators. And not just Virginia and New Jersey, right? I think I focused a lot on that because they're the only ones that are really guaranteed. But there are House elections. There are already 3 vacancies and counting. People leave office. People end up being appointed. Donald Trump had a lot of people overturned in the early stages of his administration. Chances are that will happen again, and someone by November 2025, in time for a scheduled special election, will also retire or leave the office, resign from being Secretary of State, get fired. I don't know what's going to happen. Either way, we will more than likely see an additional House of Representatives election. We might see another Senate election. We will see another Senate election. Marco Rubio just got confirmed to being the next Secretary of State. I'm not sure. Maybe Florida is going to push it to the 2026 cycle. But still, looking at where we are right now, the 2025 elections here for the United States Senate, for the House of Representatives and also the governor's races are going to be quite important. Just as they were in 2021, just as they were in 2017, they were the early indicators that there is pushback on administrations and can predict very often, far out in advance, which political party will be taking back the Oval Office. And it might be a good indicator for 2028. But again, looking at a lot of these races, it isn't just 2 governor elections that are, statewide and important. State legislative races, too, will be interesting to see. Do these areas in more urban areas start to shift to the right like they did in 2024? Do these areas that are more suburban start pushing back away from Trump like they did in 2020 but started to come back a little bit more in 2024? I don't know, right? But these are going to be questions that are going to be answered, and it will all be very interesting. And so here's what's upcoming. Florida's 1st district for House of Representatives, this is Matt Gaetz. He chose to leave his seat or not assume it after being elected. Thought he was going to be Attorney General. Very clearly not Attorney General. Very solid Republican district. Would be shocked if it was competitive. But again, crazier things have happened. Florida's 6th district, another district here, Republican plus 14, meaning that it's very partisan, overwhelmingly Republican. And then Elise Stefanik's district, which I'm actually interested by looking at recent election results. If you take a look at the 21st district as to how they voted in 2024, let's see here. Well, in 2020, President for Trump, 54 to 41. Let's see if we can find the 2024 elections here. I'm not sure if they're going to show us. Elise Stefanik had a pretty strong result. If we can take a look, 2024, Elise Stefanik won 58 to 38, but it would be interesting, right? Because it would be a race that could help tell us a little bit more information about, what we can expect for 2026 and for 2028, because it's one of those races, especially a very high profile race at that, it's going to be quite interesting. And so I'd encourage you to buckle up. We are in for a wild ride. This is going to be, 1,400 plus more days of the second Trump administration. We have a lot to talk about, and we have a lot to really unpack. Now, I'm probably going to be spending the next coming weeks just talking about 2024 election, taking a bit of a deep dive into some areas that might be, interesting for both Democrats, Republicans, independents, of course, and also looking at where the Republican Party really expanded and where at all, if there are any places that are silver linings for Democrats. Newsflash, right? Not many silver linings for Democrats. I think that what they're going to likely see over 2025 is that's really where they're going to get some of their good news, right? If they're able to win a special election or if they're able to be in a good position in a special election, it'll say, you know what? Democratic organizing is not gone. I think Democrats feel very similar to how Republicans did in, 2009 when Obama had his massive election. I don't think Obama and Trump had similar elections at all, but what I do think is that the sentiment is very real. Do we have a party type of position that many Democrats are taking right now is something that Republicans felt in 2009. So, parties always recover, right? 2008 was the biggest, advantage for Democrats in the House of Representatives they had seen in a very long time. And 2 years later, Republicans have the biggest advantage they have seen in a very long time. So, crazier things have happened in American politics. Bigger changes, bigger swings have happened. So 2025 will be an interesting ride. I'm interested to see, exactly what happens here on both sides of the aisle. But chances are it'll be a good indicator for future elections and something that is certainly worth watching, which is why we're going to be spending a lot of time looking at it, as well as looking back on 2024 and comparing some of these election results that can help us be, on top of it for the next coming few cycles. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, then a playlist from my 2024, post-election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.